Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My Karen wife won't let my mother come visit us for Christmas. After that, am I the jerk for accepting my family's Christmas invitation despite my husband being upset? And after that, got fired from a place I was never employed at. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen doesn't get to stop her mother-in-law from visiting for Christmas. Oh, but I can't stand your mother, Reddit boy. Her head's even bigger than yours. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My Karen wife won't let my mother come visit us for Christmas. My wife, my mom, and I have a huge point of contention when it comes to visits. We live about a 7-hour plane ride away from my mom, and there hasn't been a single visit in 5 years. My wife and my mom never had a great relationship. It wasn't too terrible, but just very different people, and they get on each other's nerves, so my wife doesn't want her to stay in the house. It makes me sad, but my wife feels the home needs to be a sanctuary, and no one who upsets her should be allowed to stay in her sanctuary, and I chose to support that. Her ideal visit would be my mom staying at a hotel and having designated visiting times. My mom says we can make our rules, but we can't seriously expect her to put her time and effort into traveling to stay at a hotel. I also understand that train of thought. My wife, however, thinks my mom owes it to our kids to make the effort. My mom says my wife is selfish for expecting her to sacrifice her time, effort, and peace of mind just to be treated like a burden. I've told my wife to leave it alone. I called my mom recently to talk, and my wife came over and began making digs about how the kids don't recognize my mom and were asking if I actually have parents. My mom said my wife needed to leave the conversation or she was going to hang up. My wife said it's so sad that my mom won't just come and see her grandkids because she feels entitled to stay in our house. I just snapped and told my wife that she needs to stop acting entitled to my mom's time, energy, the money it would take to visit, and that she's the entitled one. My mom began laughing and my wife looked devastated. I quickly hung up and I tried to talk it out with my wife, but she was furious and said I broke a cardinal rule of marriage by calling her out in front of my mom. I do get that, but I've given her my opinion in private so many times. Oh, there's so much more to this story. Your mom didn't just get relegated to a hotel for nothing. How long does she expect to stay? I've had relatives come visit for 4 to 5 weeks at a time in a small house. After the last visit, I said nope, hotel. The visit ends terribly when it's that long. Having so many adults crammed in a small space for too long isn't pleasant for anyone. I think it's completely reasonable for your wife to ask your mom to stay in a hotel. Visit all day together, but retire to separate places to decompress. I also think it's sad that your mom doesn't come to visit her grandkids. I'm team wife all the way. You're the jerk. My wife feels the home needs to be a sanctuary, and no one who upsets her should be allowed to stay in her sanctuary. This is an eminently reasonable approach. But you are the reason your mom does not see your kids. You could take them and visit her. So your wife is right. You and your mom are not interested enough to make it happen. You're the jerk. Typical mama's boy who refuses to support his wife when it comes to his mama. If I were your wife, this crap would so not fly with me. I'd kick you out in a heartbeat and file for divorce. It doesn't matter what the argument is about. As a good husband, you're supposed to support your wife no matter what. Especially when it comes to entitled in-laws like your mother, who honestly sounds insufferable. Is it your mom's house? No. So why should she get to come and stay there whenever she wants against your wife's wishes? Selfish little man babies like you do not deserve to be married, period. Both of my ex-husbands ended up being mama's boys, and look where that got them. Divorced, and both paying me alimony for many years to come. Bottom line, want to keep a beautiful woman? Stop choosing your mom over her. Grow up and be a man. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for accepting my family's Christmas invitation despite my husband being upset? I, female 32, met this wonderful man, Philip, male 36, 2 years ago. We got married 4 months ago. For context, I have a 10-year-old son, Billy, from my previous relationship, and my ex isn't in the picture. I have to admit that Philip's relationship with my family isn't so great. They would disagree on a lot of things. For example, he had an argument with my dad when he said that he was keeping their grandson away from them, But Philip stated he wasn't, and that he couldn't visit with Billy because he had work. I was sick at the time. The latest argument was what made things worse. My mom and sister were discussing natural remedies, they're into this stuff, for my niece, and Philip, he's a pediatrician, called both of them ignorant for not using meds instead, which caused a huge argument and Philip being no longer welcomed at my parents' house. Now, they sent me and Billy an invitation for Christmas, but did not include Philip, which I expected given how strained their relationship has become. I called my mom to confirm that I'll attend, but the minute Philip found out, he went off saying he could not believe I was fine with my family excluding him, and then agreed to go and leave him behind. I told him it's their celebration, and I don't get to decide their guest list for them. And also, I'm not leaving him behind because he did not have any plans for Christmas. He said he thought that we'd automatically celebrate together, the three of us, but now I'm taking Billy away from him as well. I thought that was a bit melodramatic because it's literally just a few hours at my parents' home, but he insisted it was about principle and respect. We had a big argument, and I said that he basically alienated himself by continually picking arguments with my family, and he started ranting, saying it wasn't about the fact that they didn't invite him, but the fact that I was willing to let him spend Christmas alone without me and Billy. We went back and forth on the issue, but did not seem to reach a solution. My parents are used to spending every major holiday with Billy, so you can see how much pressure I'm getting from both sides here. You're the jerk. He's your husband, and he's done nothing wrong. 1. Your dad picked a fight because he had to work and you didn't defend him. 2. You're encouraging your mom to be an idiot and not be knowledgeable on medications and wanting to do natural healing. And when your husband, as a medical professional, stated the facts, you let them be terrible to him. You think it's okay to leave your husband alone on Christmas because they're being horrible to him. And I'd be upset too that you're not doing anything to defend him when he's done nothing wrong. You're taking their side, and in doing so, it shows that you don't care for your husband. Keep this up, and he will leave. Maybe Mom can calm the situation down with some lavender oil. How are you not outraged that your parents left your husband out of the invitation to spend Christmas with them? And how could you possibly contemplate leaving your husband alone at Christmas? Do you actually want to be married to him? You accepted an invitation which excludes him, and you think this is reasonable? You're the jerk. You're the jerk. You're right. You don't get to decide their guest list for them. However, you do get to decide whether or not to spend Christmas with your husband. Every married couple I know would automatically expect to spend Christmas together. Not the jerk. Your husband had no right to talk to your parents like that. He's a fraudster who capitalizes off the pharmaceutical industry. I can't tell you how many so-called doctors have told me that my kids need to be on all that crap. I tell them the same thing every time. God put us on this world thousands of years ago, and we never needed this stuff before. Why the heck would we need it now? Oh yeah, we don't. You just want to line your pockets by taking advantage of me and my family. Son having seizures? Oh, he needs to be on these 3 different medications, which will run you $1,000 a month. Daughter's blood sugar too high? Oh, she needs to be on this and that, which costs $700 a month, and test her glucose every 12 hours. When did people stop trusting in the power of prayer and decide to fall victim to the lies of these fraudsters? I feed my kids natural diets, which consists mostly of fruits and veggies. You'd be surprised how many high-quality fruits and veggies are now sold at the dollar store. Don't believe all the organic nonsense. Any fruits and veggies are 1,000 times better than the crap they feed your kids at school. This is also part of why I homeschool all 6 of my kids. I refuse to allow them to be taught the false, his story that is taught in schools now. I teach my kids the truth of how we got here, what our purpose is, the light work that we were put here to do. I teach them that they are in fact star seeds who are here to change the world. 5 of my 6 kids are indigo children, and 1 is not an indigo, unfortunately. He also doesn't look a thing like his siblings, which really was a disappointment to me. He gets angry every time I tell him that even though he's not special like the others, he can still make a difference in the world. It just won't be as powerful as his siblings. He's the one that doctors told me needs to be on antidepressants, and I tell them every time that no, he doesn't need that. He's just disappointed that he's not an indigo, and he has to accept it. I can tell they look down on me for my beliefs, which is unfortunate since so many are awakening to the light. In truth, love, and light, namaste. And this is why I believe that not everyone out there is cut out to be having kids. You can say that again. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. You spend Christmas with your spouse and your kid. In-laws inviting you but excluding them is way out of line. I don't think Philip's gonna be sticking around with her too much longer. Got fired from a place I was never employed at. So I work at a place where the uniform is a stunningly fashionable red polo with black trim. This occurred at a store where they wear the slimming black with a lime green trim. I'm on my way home from work one winter day and decide to stop by the grocery store. As it is winter, I'm wearing my winter jacket, which is a very vibrant purple, and because it's kind of warm out, it's unzipped to reveal my work shirt. I also have my headphones in, a headband on, and a bright blue shoulder bag, aka I'm clearly a customer. So I'm kneeling down in front of some drinks, pondering which one I want to buy, when this woman starts getting up in my business. I shuffle over, thinking maybe she wants to look at the drinks as well, and start pushing a couple in my basket. Then I hear the dreaded, "Excuse me?" I glance around, hoping she's going at someone else, but to no avail. I look up, pulling out one of my earbuds and say, "Sorry, am I in your way?" Because my parents raised me to be polite. "Where's the coconut oil?" I just blink and shrug. "I don't know, sorry. Over there maybe?" And I point over towards the baking aisle. "What do you mean you don't know? Are you that incompetent at your job?" Well, now I'm ticked off. I clearly don't work there, and for the record, I'm very competent at my job. My job not at this grocery store. "Lady, I don't work here. Go find someone else." "You're wearing a uniform. You have to help me." "For a store down the street, not here. I don't have to help you with anything. Now leave me alone." And I start to walk off. But she screams at me as I'm leaving. "I'm going to report you to your manager." To which my mature self tells her, "Go for it." Now I finish up my shopping and I'm using the self-checkout because between work and this Karen, I've had more social interaction than my introverted self can handle when I hear, "There she is. That's her." I look up to see who's screaming, and lo and behold, there's Karen, and she's dragging this poor sap along with her over to me. "She wouldn't help me. I want her fired." "Ma'am, she doesn't work here." "I don't care. I want her fired anyway. She's useless and rude." "Ma'am, she doesn't work here. She works somewhere else. I literally don't have the authority to fire her." "Are you telling me you're not going to fire her, even though she was rude?" At this point, me and Buddy make eye contact, and a moment of understanding passes, as it does between fellow retail staff, and I give him a small nod, and he sighs. "Very well. Miss, I'm afraid it's just not working out. I'm going to have to let you go." I just nod solemnly. "I understand. I'll be going now then." And I gather up my groceries and go to leave. And Karen just has the biggest grin on her face. And that is the story of how I got fired from a store I never worked at a single day in my life. Edit. To those accusing me of stealing someone else's story, I didn't. These Karens are all over, and this same situation is happening all over. Also, for those saying that Buddy shouldn't have done what he did, he was a trainee, not a manager. Just a poor sap who was suddenly way over his head with a belligerent woman that we both just wanted to go away. Never encourage these idiots. Never let them think they actually got someone fired for crap like this, because they'll just escalate from there. Fussy guest demands discount for lack of parking. I maliciously comply. On sold-out weekends, our already limited parking becomes even more limited. Guest and her husband arrive early evening. Car park is already full, so they park in front of the guest door to check in, blocking other vehicles in. Check-in is non-eventful. I rattle off my spiel and hand the guest her keys. Guest walks off, then stops all of a sudden. As she turns to face me again, I know that she's about to complain about something. We all know the pose. Eyes widen as they ready themselves to plead their case as they point and wiggle their index finger in the air at shoulder height. Game on. Guest: "You need more parking spots. There's not enough for 40 rooms. Your car park is already full. I reserved a space." Me: "I'm sorry, ma'am, but our parking is on a first-come, first-served basis. We do not reserve spaces. If the car park is full, all of the on-street parking is free." Her: "Well, there should be 40 spaces for all 40 rooms." Side note: We have 12 spaces at the front of our property, which stretches from the street to our front entrance. Local council regulations state that we only need 1 space per 4 rooms. We beat the regulations by 2. Me: I understand your frustrations, Mrs. Nitpicker, but our plans to construct an underground parking garage have been delayed due to lockdown-induced shovel shortage. Not a shovel to be found within 100 kilometers. It should be dug out and fully operational by the time our city hosts the Olympics in 2032, though. Her: You should extend your car park until then, so every room has an assigned space. I think we should be given a discount for no parking. Me: The owner did consider just knocking this place down completely and making it into a public car park, but then he realized that we would have no rooms left for our guests, which would lower our property rating. So we decided to keep things as they are for the time being. Her: And the discount I asked for? I type away furiously, while umming and ahhing for dramatic effect. Me: I've applied the discount to your folio. I've calculated the total amount it will cost you to park on the street for your 7-day stay and have deducted that amount from your bill. Is there anything else I can help you with, ma'am? Her: Huffs and gives me a smug smile. Well, I should think so. Guest walks off. As I stated earlier, street parking is free 24/7. Her total discount was $0. She never even noticed. Update to my nephew stealing cans from my shed. To recap, as many previous readers know, my nephew stole a ton of cans from my shed after breaking into it and cashed them in at the bottle drop for about $200. My sister and brother-in-law acted like I was a jerk for wanting the money back for the cans and damages. I ended up pressing charges because they refused to pay, and things turned pretty ugly. I filed a small claims lawsuit, and they had to pay me back for the cost of damages, theft, emotional damages for constant harassment, and the cost of the lawsuit itself, all adding up to $500, which finally made my sister and brother-in-law raise a white flag and actually start parenting their kids. My nephews got all of their privileges taken away and were forced by a judge to work community service, which they hated and had to be forced just to complete. They didn't get more than 100 hours each because I had been repaid by their parents when we settled out of court, so the judge pretty much fast-tracked the case. The nephews ended up picking up garbage and doing work around several local parks, and the man directing them, I heard, was a retired drill sergeant, so they had no fun whatsoever. My eldest nephew constantly showed his issues with authority and got into screaming matches with everyone who told him to work. His father had to be called over just to make the boy pick up a rake. The kid openly blamed me for his predicament, and his brothers were both initially on his side. But after a while, they realized that he's just crazy and entitled, and they no longer wanted any part of it. So my 2 younger nephews stopped following his lead because it finally clicked just how in the wrong they were. Problem is that my sister and brother-in-law blamed me for the divide in their family, which didn't end well for them as no one in the family was on their side about it. Everything was put on them and their bad parenting, and without me to blame, they just became silent and bitter. Half the family doesn't want to associate with them now, and their own kids are divided because the eldest refuses to change. It got so bad that my eldest nephew resorted to something so incredibly dumb that you're not going to want to believe it. In the middle of the night, he snuck out and assaulted my house with a pair of his dad's claw hammers. I say a pair because he literally had one in each hand. The first thing he did was start smashing the new lock on my shed, and it didn't break. But he heavily damaged it to the point it was no longer usable, and I had to later remove it with a bolt cutter. He also did a lot of damage to the shed door with the hammer claws. I awoke to the sounds of the hammers and called the police after peeking out of my bedroom window and seeing someone outside hitting the shed. Though I didn't realize it was him at first because he had his face covered with a creepy-looking mask. He saw the bedroom lights come on and chucked one of the hammers through my window. There was broken glass everywhere, and I'm lucky I didn't cut my feet on any of it because I was barefoot. Then my nephew started beating on my back door with the remaining hammer. He did major damage, breaking the knob and the window on the door, and also tore into the door itself with the hammer claw. I was worried the door wouldn't hold out, so I yelled the police were on their way, and he took off before they arrived. The night vision on my cameras showed that it was him. He had a mask on, but he was wearing his school hoodie, as well as his Nike shoes that were also pretty identifiable since his brothers don't have a pair like them. His fingerprints were also on the hammer he threw at my window. My nephews had already all been fingerprinted when they were arrested the first time, so police matched the ones on the hammer to him. When the cops came for my eldest nephew, he obviously denied it was him, but there's no one else it could have been. The other hammer was found in his room, along with the clothes and the mask that he wore, all of which were taken as evidence. The mask was of a Star Wars character I was told is called the Grand Inquisitor. This time, though, his parents did nothing to try and protect him. And they didn't try to pass the blame on me either. They just let their son be taken away screaming. I wasn't there to see the arrest, but I was told by my sister that my eldest nephew was switching back and forth from crying that he didn't do anything wrong to screaming that it was all my fault and he had to get back at me. The boy had to go through a serious mental evaluation and was found to be potentially bipolar. Doesn't really excuse what he did though. Later on, when he was properly diagnosed as bipolar, he started blaming everything he did wrong on that and acted like he should be vilified just for getting treatment for it. But he ended up having a month-long stint in juvenile hall. They got my nephew properly medicated and he pleaded guilty to forego court again in exchange for more community service and mandatory counseling, as well as probation this time. His dad came to my house and personally replaced the window and the door, though he barely said a word to me while doing it. My two younger nephews are still excluding their older brother from pretty much everything, and he still hasn't apologized for attacking my home either. He's also unfortunately repeating a school year because of how badly his grades tanked, which his parents are still very unhappy about. My two younger nephews dropped by on their own in July to personally apologize to me. They said that they always just followed their brother's lead and he made everything they were doing seem so fun, but the punishments for the crimes are not worth the kind of fun they were having, and they don't want to do it with him anymore. They want their fun uncle back and asked if we could start over. I said we can, but they'll have to earn back my trust, which they happily agreed to. My eldest nephew had his 17th birthday a few months ago and basically got nothing, not even a cake. It was part of his punishment for what he had done. I can only imagine how much money he's cost his parents in the past year alone. He led his brothers to steal from me and then destroyed my bedroom window and back door. I imagine in total, with the lawsuit I'd previously filed and replacing the door and the window cost them over $1,000. Doors and windows are not cheap. Meanwhile, my youngest nephew had his birthday a month after that and got a new mountain bike among his gifts. This really upset my eldest nephew and he slashed the tires on the bike, which landed him in even more trouble. I know a thing or two about fixing bikes, so I went out and bought new tubes and tires for the bike and put them on it. So the bike is fine, and my nephew thanked me a lot for fixing it. My eldest nephew resorted to trying to run away because he wasn't being enabled anymore. He just walked out, got on his bike with a backpack full of stuff, and rode off. His parents quickly reported him missing because he left a goodbye letter that basically blamed me and his bipolar for all his problems. In the letter, he stated that he can't wait till he's 18 to get away from all of us. So he was doing us a favor by getting rid of himself sooner. But he came back 3 days later without his bike or backpack and looking beat up. He wouldn't tell anyone what happened. We still don't know, but he was chewed out for continuously using me as a scapegoat for his personal issues because blaming me was the first thing he did after he got back. I didn't make him steal from me. I didn't make him attack my house. I didn't make him run away. That was all him. And he nearly ended up back in juvie for running off because he violated his probation. But he got off easy somehow. Currently, he spends his days pretty much in his room when not in school or doing chores or going to counseling. He finished his community service, but his probation will last until he's 18. He got some lenience for being diagnosed as bipolar, but it couldn't get him off the hook. And believe me, he tried many times. Once they told him what was wrong with him, it became his excuse for everything. But plenty of people go their whole lives with that same mental condition and never do the kinds of things he did. I've been mending things with my two younger nephews, but I don't want to be around the eldest at all, and the feeling is clearly mutual on his part. I've only seen him once in person the past few months, and he glared at me with more hate than I've ever seen from anyone before stomping away. He can't paint me as the villain anymore without being called out on it, so there isn't much he can do other than just try and get through this. For the most part, he's totally shut down since school started. I'm told he barely speaks, even at school. My other nephews tell me he's getting laughed at and ostracized, which I don't think is going to help him get better. My sister and brother-in-law are also not on their best terms with me right now as well, but they can't exactly put any blame on me either. They know it was all on them and their bad parenting. I basically forced them to be more active in their kids' lives, which they should have been doing already. They complain a lot about being tired from work and keeping an eye on their kids. So whenever we talk as of late, it's always awkward and forced. They don't come to my house or me to theirs, but we do see each other at my parents' house, and our mother demands we be civil there, which I have no problem with. My 2 younger nephews have regained most of their privileges. They got their TV and video games back, but my eldest nephew isn't allowed on them at all. I'm told he's got some electronic entertainment in his room, but what kind? I don't know. I just know he spends most of his time in there unless he has to be somewhere else. My eldest nephew is also not welcome pretty much anywhere in the family anymore. I've recently heard from my parents that they don't even want to see him on Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve this year because they're sick of his behavior and petty thievery. I guess I can understand that, but even I feel it's a bit harsh. My sister and brother-in-law do as well because they're threatening to boycott if he can't come to either holiday. I can't stand that kid and would not want him in my house either, so I can understand why they've made that decision. But I don't think excluding him from everything and everyone is going to make him better. It's going to take a long time for my eldest nephew to mend bridges, if they can even be mended at all. The way things stand, he may try running off again once he's of age, unless the last time scared him too much to try it again. But hopefully things will get better for him in time, if it's not too late to fix his behavior. I may not seem like it, but he's still my nephew and I care, but I'm kind of powerless to do anything. So for now, the most I can do is just keep my nose out of it and offer support where I can. Don't touch anything that isn't on the schedule. Okay, a little bit of context. I work in a manufacturing plant for a multinational company producing microchips. I'm the shift lead engineer on night shift for the front end of the week, Sunday through Wednesday. So there's very little oversight from management except when I see them in the morning on my way out the door. The machines we work on are huge, think Greyhound bus size, and require fairly strategic planning to get the most we can out of them. In recent months, the day shift team has been slacking on their scheduled maintenance items. Normally, this isn't a big deal since we are understaffed, just like every other company in America right now, and we pick up the slack where we can on night shift. The machines run 24 hours a day, so if you have to pass work to the incoming shift, it isn't an issue, and everyone tends to help out everyone. The problem comes in when day shift or the other end of the week move scheduled maintenance off of their shift, but don't move it into our scheduled work calendar. When the machines reach their critical threshold, they shut themselves down until the work is performed. This is normally at midnight on days I'm working. Well, as it happens, this has been occurring more and more over the past few weeks, and I've been letting my senior manager know that's why we've been seeing an availability drop, not from our lack of effort. He's a newer senior manager, so I tried to explain the critical thresholds to him and how we need to at least keep the calendar accurate so we don't have any surprises by machines shutting themselves down unexpectedly. He didn't really seem to want to listen to this and brushed me off, telling me, "If it isn't on the calendar, don't work on that machine." Cue malicious compliance. On Sunday night when I get into work, the schedule is completely empty, not uncommon for weekends. But wouldn't you know it, 3 maintenance items had been moved from the back end of the week and were never rescheduled. So at midnight, 3 machines shut themselves down for maintenance. But I've been told if it isn't on the calendar, I can't touch those machines. I walk up to the production floor and tell all my technicians that we won't be working on any of those machines as they aren't scheduled for us to complete. And per the area senior manager, we don't touch anything unless it's on the calendar. They've been getting more and more frustrated recently with this, so their eyes light up as I tell them we won't be completing any of the work. Then comes Monday morning. I tell the incoming shift and my direct manager about the machines, and they have a good laugh about the situation. It's only roughly 2 hours of work per machine, so I didn't completely do over the day shift. And then I run into my senior manager on my way out the door and casually let him know we have 3 machines that have been down for 6 hours and need to be added to the schedule so somebody can start working on them. His eyes just about pop out of his head and he says, "How could you let 3 machines sit down for half the night and not even start on them? Were there other machines down that stopped you from getting to them?" And I responded with, "Nope, you just told me if it isn't on the calendar, don't touch it." His face went beet red and I saw the vein on his temple start throbbing, but he knew I was right. Since then, the calendar has been pretty dang accurate, and if I see a tool going critical, he's now informed me that I'm allowed to work on it to keep the product flowing. If you want to sit around, you can do it from home. This isn't my tale, but one of a friend of mine, Craig. This took place about 10 years ago. He worked for an IT company maintaining the mainframe and other technical needs throughout the building, along with electrical safety checks. He was a bit OCD, and this helped him by being on top of things that were needing sorted. He had custom spreadsheets documenting the last 10 years of repairs on everything he was responsible for. This sheet, by the 5-year mark, had already given him a fairly good idea of what items were likely to fail, either due to updates or physical parts failing due to the 24-hour running of the system. There was a period of a week where he was ahead and decided to get ahead of his upcoming repairs, checking the items and replacing what needed to be done. 2 weeks later, he was sitting in his office when the VP arrived, and on the rounds, she noticed that all 3 times she passed, he was sitting idle in his office. Outraged he was being paid for doing nothing, she had his boss pull him up. Boss: VP noticed you haven't done much today and pulled your work log for the last few weeks. You've only logged 4 jobs in 2 weeks. Craig: I've been ahead for the last couple weeks, just knocking off jobs before they came up to make time for the bigger jobs that are about to come up next week. Boss: Well, you're paid to work, not sit about. If you want to sit about, do it at home. Craig, shrugging internally: Well, I've got some holiday time to take. If you give me a week to organize the cover and take care of the large jobs, I'll take time off. Boss: Deal. Off you go. Enjoy your holiday. Craig: But what about the work next week? Boss: No buts. You're on holiday. Effectively immediately. I'll clear it up with HR. Now off you go. Cue malicious compliance. Craig decided to not try and reiterate just how much work was due next week and went on holiday for 2 weeks, turning his work phone off. In that 2 weeks, due to a lack of warning, the tech from another center that usually covered wasn't available. At the same time, there were safety issues, software updates, and other minor issues that were expected, not to mention the dozens of unexpected issues that came up. When Monday after his holiday came up, he turned his phone on to find 20+ texts. His phone inbox was full of voicemails, and he had dozens of emails from panicking management. He got into work and was set upon. Where have you been? We needed you. XYZ all failed while you were gone, and we didn't have cover. Craig smiled and reminded his boss about the conversation 2 weeks prior, and also had a coworker that overheard the entire thing back him up. After that, not a single manager dared to question his slow week, not even the VP. Challenge accepted, challenge won. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.